It's another Thunder Thursday on newsok.com. We're talking work friends and cupcakes. Cupcakes and work friends. And to do it, I'm with my very best friends. Jenny Carlson, columnist, Thunder writer Eric Horn, columnist Barry Trammell, Thunder writer Brett Dawson. I'm your host, Darnell Mayberry. We're talking the latest in the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook saga. Unfortunately, these guys keep going at it in some way or another. The latest Kevin Durant cover story in Rolling Stone comes out yesterday, followed up by a Russell Westbrook cover story in Sports Illustrated. Both fantastic articles. I highly recommend them. A lot of things were said in both of those articles, particularly by Kevin Durant. The hits keep coming on OKC and Russell Westbrook. The latest being, I guess the biggest being, he's saying Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, they were just work friends. They weren't really friends. They were just work friends. Guys, what did you make of that article?
Darnell, that's so cute.
It's cute.
That was last week's phrase, right? With this whole thing?
Cute.
That's cute. That's cute. That's what Russell Westbrook said a week ago about Kevin Durant. We don't yet know what he thinks about the Rolling Stone article. Haven't sort of ferreted that out, but come on. I mean, these guys worked together for 8 years, and yeah, I mean, obviously their relationship was born at work, but these guys, I mean, for everything they said for 8 years was that they hung out, that they got along, they liked each other, they had each other's backs. I'm not saying that they were like, kindred spirits, because I think they are different guys, but come on, what's going on here? This just seems ridiculous.
Eric, what is going on here?
It seems very, strange, I guess would be the easiest word to say. I particularly remember going on road trips and seeing these guys together, sitting next to each other at the top of the bleachers at Cameron Payne's high school Hall of Fame induction ceremony. They're eating barbecue together in Memphis. These guys did stuff together. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were more than work friends. I mean, you have people you go to lunch with at work all the time, but you don't hang out with away from work. So is it necessarily false? We can't say that, but at the same time, I do think that these guys were more than work friends. It's just strange that the way that these things are being said by Kevin Durant and the people around him keep coming out. It doesn't seem like it jived with what was happening at the time that he was here and what we saw with our own eyes.
Barry, let's save you for last. Brett, you came in. Barry's going to get the last word on the work friends. You came in on this about a month ago, maybe not even. From an outsider's perspective, give us what your take is on this Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook narrative before you got here, and now that you're sort of thrown in the middle of it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, before I came here, my thought was just this is a guy who made a decision to go somewhere else and whatever. And I understand now there's a lot more depth behind it than that. There's a lot more to that relationship. There's a lot more to the relationship between Durant and the organization. There's a lot to talk about. These guys are going to set a record for preseason cover stories between the two of them. But I will tell you this, no less an authority than the amazing Slodek, the halftime guy who stacks the chairs, who I wrote about for our Thunder preseason section, told me he thought, based on watching them in the tunnel, those guys were really tight. So, if Slodek says they were close, I'm pretty sure they were close.
It must be true.
Got to be true.
Barry, you get the last word. Work friends or friends?
I don't know that we can. I don't really trust anything I saw out of Kevin Durant before the decision now. So I don't, and I thought he and Russell were, compatible, but, there's no reason to think that's true now. I can tell you this. You made a great joke. You guys hadn't got the joke yet. I don't know if you saw his tweet this morning. He tweets this morning. He's waiting for Anthony Slater to send him a message saying we were just work friends. But I can tell you this. If I had somebody who was not a work friend, was a real friend, I wouldn't treat him like this.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us would. I don't think Kevin Durant would. So I sort of think he's telling the truth on that one. What he's showing is he really didn't care that much about Russell Westbrook as a person.
What does it say about Kevin Durant selecting Russell Westbrook to induct him into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame about their relationship and it suddenly now being about being just work friends? Would you just select somebody who's strictly a work friend to induct you into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame?
He could have had anybody do it.
He could have had his mother, family, somebody in the Thunder organization, Sam Presti. It just seems weird.
Let's not pretend it's the best man at his wedding. I mean, I think Kevin Durant, it seems to me when he got that honor, Oklahoma Hall of Fame, he might have thought like the same thing I thought, which is, it seems a little funny. But, Durant is, despite the current turmoil, Durant's mostly a get along with type of guy. You might have thought, well, they'd probably like to hear from Russell, make it a Thunder deal. I don't think that he put a lot of thought or a lot of concern into that night at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame.
And there's a lot of interesting things out of this, but one of the things to me that it strikes me as interesting is, it's to me, work friends can be a good thing. I mean, it's good to have friends at work, but the way that this is portrayed to have been said, and I guess we can't know for certain, but it just seems like this is another attempt by Kevin Durant to bring down people in Oklahoma City, to bring down Russell Westbrook, to bring down the Thunder organization, because we haven't even got to some of the stuff that, his mom said, that he wasn't supported, that he wasn't surrounded. I mean, just this continuing bring down of Oklahoma City and the Thunder, that's what I don't get. It's like, why continually sort of, you wrote about this last week, Barry, knocking down the Thunder seems to knock down Kevin Durant more than anybody.
We'll get to that in a second. I want to talk cupcakes first. Let's get to the cupcakes first.
The moderator takes
Let's
over.
get to the cupcakes first. About the cupcakes, Russell Westbrook in the Sports Illustrated article, there was a sliver of information, a nugget that we didn't know. On July 4th, when Russell Westbrook tweeted, it was sort of non-reaction apparently. He tweeted a 3-layer thing of cupcakes that said, "Happy 4th of July, y'all." That was the same day Kevin Durant made the decision, and Lee Jenkins, who wrote the great piece in Sports Illustrated, says that could have been a veiled shot at Kevin Durant, because Kendrick Perkins, of all people, had a saying when he was with this team, whenever he thought someone was being soft, he'd call them cupcakes. And so maybe that was Russell Westbrook's way of calling Kevin Durant soft, by throwing up a picture on Instagram of 3 layers of cupcakes. Is Kevin Durant a cupcake, and was Russell Westbrook calling him a cupcake?
First, it all comes back to Perk, which is great.
Yeah.
It should always all come back to Perk. Is he calling him soft? It seems that way. Is he soft for doing that? I understand Russell Westbrook's perspective. If you're saying you're talking about a guy you perceive as a soft player, and your perception is he left the team that was competing against the Golden State Warriors, a team that had a chance to beat them and couldn't quite do it, and he left and joined them, I understand that interpretation of calling a guy soft if that's what Russell Westbrook was doing.
Yeah.
There's not any question that Russell Westbrook was taking a shot at Kevin Durant. We know that. The question is Durant soft? None of us know. But that's what people around the league think. That's what the Thunder thinks. That's what Reggie Miller and Charles Barkley and all kinds of people, Paul Pierce, that's what they think, because he was, he left a chance to win a title sort of with something he had built and helped formulate, and just jumped on a gravy train. And so lots of people think he's soft.
Yeah, and I think it gets back, I said before what Durant's mom had said in the Rolling Stone piece. This was a team, he was going to potentially be with a team that was, on paper at least, better than the Warriors. Because if he resigns, they're going to go get Al Horford. And they're going to have Al Horford, Victor Oladipo, Westbrook, Durant, and Steven Adams as the starting 5. That's the starting 5 if Kevin Durant re-signs with the Thunder. So the idea that, he could have had that roster around him and gone out and competed with this team that he brought from infancy up and now looks like the best team in the NBA, to walk away from that, it's mind-boggling. I don't even know what to say.
For context, here's what Kevin's mom said in Rolling Stone magazine. Wanda Pratt, who you guys know as Wanda Pratt, now wants to be called Wanda Durant. There was a claim that Kevin Durant felt that the Thunder was, quote, not in this thing with me, end quote, and we're not together like we were, end quote. So some harsh words coming from Kevin Durant and his mother in this article, some people around Kevin Durant. But guys, I want to get your opinion. Barry, let's start with you. The roster moves or lack thereof that were mentioned in that Rolling Stone article, any validity at all to what Kevin Durant was saying about the Thunder staying young and not going out and getting that sort of third banana like a Ray Allen in Boston, I think is what they pointed to.
Well, for one thing, they also brought up the Harden trade, and Durant even referenced it. So here's what I would say. Let's not look at what they could have done. Let's look at what they did done, and look at what they did do, and look at what they were. In 2013, they're the best team in the NBA. Get to the second round of the get to the first round of the playoffs. 2 games in, Patrick Beverley happens. Out goes Westbrook. Shot. 2014, the Spurs were the best team in the NBA, a fabulous team. People historically love that San Antonio team. In the West Finals, the Thunder was 2-2 against the Spurs when they had Serge Ibaka. Got blown out twice without Serge. 2015, everybody's hurt, the disaster. 2016, Thunder's up 3-1 on the Warriors, a 73-win team Warriors. They're up 7 points with 5 minutes left in Game 6. At home, Westbrook and Durant quit playing or played terrible. They lose. That's not a roster problem. Not one thing I described is a roster problem. It is a luck problem, and it's a performance problem. I got news for Wanda Pratt, and I got news for Kevin Durant. I got news for Sam Presti. You can make all the moves you want to in July. But when the playoffs arrive, they don't pass out the trophy before the ball tips. You still got to make the plays. You still got to win the games. And the Thunder had the team to do it multiple times. It just didn't work out.
Well, two things, guys. It really sounds low of Kevin Durant to blame it on other moves when they had a chance to close out the Warriors in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals. They had a 3-1 lead, and Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant were in large part the reason that they didn't get it done. So that's number one. Number two, the Thunder did try to go out and get big-name players. They tried to get Pau Gasol. They failed. Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook were in the meeting with Pau Gasol in Los Angeles, and it didn't happen. Pau Gasol chose Chicago. He's now in San Antonio.
And it wasn't a money question.
No,
it wasn't the fact that the Thunder wasn't going to throw enough money at Pau Gasol.
Correct.
So this whole idea like they're not going after pieces, they were. They just didn't always. That guy has to choose you.
They tried to get Mike Miller, Shane Battier, other players throughout the history of their time here with Kevin Durant and that core. So it's not that they didn't try to get these guys. They just chose other places, and that's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
Guys, let's move on a little bit and talk about actual basketball. I think Eric is ready to talk about basketball. I think you've got Kevin Durant fatigue.
It's not near as fun.
We finally found something Barry wants to talk about in the preseason, and Eric didn't want to talk about it.
It's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's just we've said so much on it, and you guys are so much more eloquent at talking about such a topic. So
I
I'll let y'all have it.
I go back to what I said a week ago. I was really done with this. I thought we were done with this.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it just doesn't stop. And it almost gets more and more ridiculous the more it goes. That's what I can't get over is just
The timing of these two cover stories, I mean, it couldn't have been more, I don't know if it's ironic, coincidental, whatever it is, for them to come out on the same day and give us so much to talk about. And we didn't write the stories.
No.
Like, we don't choose to talk about these. We don't make the news. We just report the news. So, but we are going to move on to basketball now. And in my hand, I hold grades that were written by none other than Brett Dawson and Eric Horn. And the thing that shocked me the most is that Steven Adams, our former coworker Anthony Slater, isn't even here. And Steven Adams is the only person who gets an A+ in these grades. Guys, is Steven Adams deserving of an A+ in the preseason?
Yes.
Asked and answered.
Says the guy who graded Steven Adams.
Look, we're not talking about this from a context of, is Steven Adams the top 10 center in the NBA? Is Steven Adams a potential all-star? We're not talking about that. We're talking strictly preseason. When Steven Adams was on the floor, he was the best Thunder player.
Ahead of Russell Westbrook, ahead of Victor Oladipo.
Yes. Victor Oladipo didn't really have a great preseason aside from his first game and some sprinkled in bits when he came back and played here. But Steven Adams was a force on defense. He changed the way the Thunder played defense when he was on the floor. Now, granted, his first game back from the ankle injury, he was playing against a second unit from Minnesota like Cole Aldrich. God bless him. He was working over poor Cole. But the next game, he played against a really talented front court in Nurkic and Jokic for Denver.
You just wanted to say those two guys' names.
I didn't want to. I was really stumbling over him. But he made those guys look rather pedestrian in the way he was getting shots up over them and then altering shots on the defensive end. He's really come leaps and bounds from the beginning of last season in terms of his ability to handle the ball, pass the ball, and shoot. And he's completely deserving of his A+. I had no problems giving him that.
Well, here's the thing, guys. Only 3 of these games were broadcast on television, 1 on Fox Sports Oklahoma, another 2 on NBA television. So most people probably didn't get to see the Thunder being played. And Brett Dawson's actually writing about that in Friday's editions of the Oklahoman. So, Brett, what else can you tell us that people might not have seen in Steven Adams this preseason You didn't grade Steven Adams. Eric did. Would you have given him an A+, and what did you see that makes him have a grade so high?
I would have given him an A. I will disagree with my esteemed colleague in one regard. Russell Westbrook is always the best player on the floor for the Thunder when he is on the floor.
I think you just took the words out of Barry Troutman's mouth.
So I would say that. But here's what he did. He didn't just dunk. He showed a floater. He had a hook shot. He had a variety of things he could do offensively. And not only that, but what you see in him sometimes, and we saw some of this in practice, and you're starting to see it in some games. You see him in the middle of the floor with the ball in his hands, surveying the court and making some decisions. It's a lot like the way Joakim Noah played at Florida for Billy Donovan. A lot of really similar stuff. You can run an offense through him in a way that it's not just dump it down to him and let him post up and score. He can do a lot of different things.
Barry, you're a member of the Steven Adams fan club. Do you think this hype, this preseason hype that's being generated by our guys, is going to be warranted?
Well, I don't have any idea. I hope so. I have every reason to believe it will be. I think Adams is a really good player, bordering on great player. I think the entire league is recognizing what this guy can do and has done, and still at a young age and a limited It's not like. He's not like
Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, he's not like guys who grew up at the age of 5 playing basketball. I mean, he's fairly new to the game still, so he's going to keep getting better. So I think there's every reason to be optimistic about Steven Adams. Now, A+ preseason. I mean, I don't know and really don't care. But starting Wednesday night in Philly, I'm going to care. And I tell you what, if I'm a Thunder fan, I'm awful glad that Steven Adams is on my squad.
Here's what I care about, and that's the fact that Steven Adams doesn't seem to have changed his personality at all. Even as his game is elevated and his stature and exposure is elevated, he's still the guy who, says funny stuff, does funny stuff. I mean, I think fans love him for a lot of reasons. Obviously, the way he plays, but I think his attitude, it's great. I mean, I hope he never loses that, because even with this floater, hook, whatever he wants to call
Flip
it,
shot.
the flip shot. Even with that, he's having fun with it. Talking about, it's a floater. I mean, he's just a guy who. He's self-deprecating. He doesn't see himself as anything huge. I mean, he's talking about, I just throw it up there and it goes in. There's been hours and hours and hours of work put in by this guy to get to this point offensively and to continue to evolve his game. So the fact that he still sees this as, this is just, this is what I do, and, it's not a big deal. I think that's really refreshing.
Well, Eric Horn is definitely raising the bar, and when it comes to expectations on Steven Adams.
I gave him a preseason grade.
A+.
I just gave him a preseason grade.
A+ for Steven
That's
Adams.
all I did.
The only person with an A+. Russell Westbrook here got an A. Domantas Sabonis got an A-, which brings me to my next question, guys. Biggest or most pleasant surprise that you guys saw in the preseason?
I know y'all gonna bang on me, but Kyle Singler.
Here we go.
Look, I'm sticking
How
to
long did this take? 25 minutes?
Look, you asked me. Biggest pleasant surprise. Who would not be pleasantly surprised by Kyle Singler shooting more than 60% from three-point range? I mean, did anybody expect that to happen?
12 of 21 you got in the Oklahoma, and he went in the preseason. 12 of 21 from downtown.
After last year, you'd have been okay with 2 of 21 almost sometimes. I mean, he was just terrible last year.
No, he shot the ball. He shot the ball very well. I mean, he still fouled at a high rate, which wasn't a big surprise to me. But if he's going to shoot like that, then that's reason enough for the Thunder to be able to throw him out there. He's 6'9", man. He's going to play.
Yeah.
He's going to play, and if he's shooting it that way, so. It was a pleasant surprise to see Kyle Singler actually make some shots.
Well, and this goes back to an easy one, and we've said it before, but I thought Sabonis, just the way he's adapted or seemingly adapted to the level of play at the NBA level, he just doesn't look out of place. And, I think we've talked about him before, but I just keep going back to that, how he physically, mentally, just in the flow of the game does not look out of place at all. To me, that's the thing as a big, especially. I think it's such a challenging position physically, mentally. The way you have to guard things. He's out of place sometimes. It happens, but I just thought that was more than I was expecting from him.
Brett, do you have a different one, or?
No, Sabonis was kind of my guy. I mean, I'm going to go to that store where Eric got his Kyle Singler banner, and I'm going to get my Sabonis one and wave it around. Okay. You grade him on a curve a little bit. He played with the starters all the time, most of the time that he was in. They're not asking him to do a ton. I mean, Billy Donovan talked about one of the reasons they liked him in the starting lineup. He's willing to move the ball. He doesn't need shots. He doesn't demand a lot. So you're getting a guy in there who's just going to move things along. They're not asking him to do a bunch. He averaged about 6 points a game. He really averaged less than 3 rebounds. He fouled quite a lot. He's not a perfect guy, but he's a rookie, and I think he is a good fit. And I think it was smart by Billy Donovan to say, you're going to throw him out there with guys who are more experienced, who can kind of boost his confidence. And I think they've got a guy who's going to be a viable starter and a real valuable player down the road.
Let's stick with you, Brett. Let's turn the page a little bit. Biggest disappointment. Who would you say was the biggest? Who or what would you say was the biggest disappointment?
Off the top of my head, I would say I was a little disappointed that we didn't see a little more of Ronnie Price, and that we didn't see. He really lost his rotation spot after he came back from that concussion to Samaje Christian. He was getting more minutes. He was coming in sooner. And Billy Donovan said that's a matter of getting some more experience for Samaje Christian against NBA players. It's really not a decision between those two guys. But look, you've got 2 backup point guards, and you were playing one more than the other one. So I think a little bit disappointing that you didn't see more out of a guy who I think you're expecting to run a second unit when Russell Westbrook's off the floor.
Eric, anything you were particularly disappointed by this preseason?
Oh, well, I guess I would say one of 2 things. It would either be Victor Oladipo's outside shot. We knew that was going to be a big question for him coming into this preseason, and he didn't shoot particularly well from 3. I think he was maybe somewhere around 4 of 18. But Enes Kanter's defense, when Steven Adams was out, I thought that was another thing that was a little bit of a disappointment to me, because we'd seen Enes Kanter make some gradual strides as the year went on in terms of his defense. But if we keep going back to this, if Steven Adams gets injured for a significant period of time with this team, and we saw him pick up an ankle sprain this preseason, he got hit in the groin again by Victor Oladipo inadvertently. If Enes Kanter's got to man the middle for any period of time, it's going to be a problem, because he was getting worked over by Dallas early in that game. Andrew Bogut and Dirk Nowitzki were just doing some crazy, amazing big man things against Enes Kanter and making him look silly. And even against Barcelona in his one-on-one defense against Barcelona had a 7-2 guy that was really getting some moves off on him in the post. And Enes Kanter, he's typically a pretty decent one-on-one defender when it comes to post play, but he was even getting used in that area too. So Enes Kanter's defense took a little step back. I don't know if I'd say take a step back, but it didn't look like what I thought it would coming into this preseason.
To your first point about Victor Oladipo's shooting, Barry, you had some issues with his shot selection in those first 2 games over in Spain, correct?
He looks to me like a Russell Westbrook circa 2009, which the problem with that is Oladipo's a lot more experienced than Russ was in 2009. It's preseason, it's early, not going to get too worked up about it, but I've been disappointed in what I've seen out of Oladipo. I was hoping that there'd be more of a connection with Westbrook and Oladipo on the floor together. I think shot selection is an issue. I think Billy Donovan can get that message across pretty good.
If he can do it with Deion Waiters, he can do it
So,
with Victor Oladipo.
I think I'm not overly concerned, but so far I haven't seen what I was hoping to see out of Oladipo.
Well, I think it bears mentioning, though, with Oladipo, even though he's had several years in the league, he's been on a franchise that is not known for good basketball. I mean, let's just be honest. Orlando is what it is right now. He had to carry a lot of freight, and whatever they got out of him, I think they just allowed it to happen. I think it may underscore just how well the Thunder develops its players, and that started with Scott Brooks, and it's carried on under Billy Donovan. They have make that a premium to develop guys, young talent, and to get those skills that they have and really build on them. So I agree it's disappointing, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of franchises in the league that guys would spend a few years playing and come out of, and you'd be like, wait a second, he's not better at some of these things. I think that's unfortunately the way it is in a lot of franchises.
And to Barry's point, it's
preseason, right?
Yeah, it's preseason. My biggest disappointment, guys, Cameron Payne. Obviously fractures the foot in the blue-white scrimmage before they even tipped off in the preseason. So not getting to see Cameron Payne was a huge blow. I was particularly disappointed by it because he's going to be so integral to the bench unit and that second team running the show offensively especially. How much better is his defense? These are all questions that we have for Cameron Payne, and we didn't get to see any of that this preseason. But let's move on. Guys, there was a report that the Thunder, speaking of Cameron Payne, was interested in trading him and some other pieces for Rudy Gay. What can you tell us about this report, and is there any chance that it could still happen?
Well, I mean, basically, Adrian Wojnarowski of the Verticals said that serious discussions were happening between the Thunder and the Kings prior to Cameron Payne's foot fracture. And, I mean, Rudy Gay has been a guy who's been rumored to be out of Sacramento for quite some time now. I mean, dating back to even June, a little bit after the playoffs, there were rumors of him going multiple places. Indiana was in the mix. Miami, as early as this week, was a place where he was thought to be able to go for like a Goran Dragic. Sacramento wants a point guard. They were talking about maybe going after, actually the Vertical report was talking about Sacramento maybe going after Ricky Rubio. So it's interesting from the standpoint that if it connects, the Thunder would be willing to give up with a young asset like Cameron Payne. And it's also interesting from the standpoint that they'd be willing to risk having Rudy Gay walk for nothing because he's going to opt out of his contract at the end of this season, the final year of his contract, and become a free agent in 2017. So does the Thunder need a wing? Probably. Is Rudy Gay the guy that they should get? I don't know.
Barry, what do you say? Should they go get Rudy Gay?
Oh, I'd probably say no. He does not have a history of making teams better. In fact, he has a history of teams improving after he goes. Memphis traded him. Lionel Hollins gets all worked up, and the Grizzlies, that's really when they sort of became the Grizzlies that we know today still. So he's ended up he was in Toronto, Sacramento, didn't make any kind of a meaningful impact on either one of those teams when they needed lots of help. So if you could get him for relatively nothing, I would say, okay. I would not trade Cameron Payne for him.
He sort of strikes me as, I think about him in some of the same ways I think about like O.J. Mayo and Dwight Howard to some degree, you know, like Barry said, guys that when they leave a team, it almost elevates that team because it's weights off their shoulders or something. And I think all three of those players have some, you know, have some serious skill, obviously, but for whatever reason, just doesn't seem to have worked out great of rosters they've been on. So I'm sort of in the, I don't know. I'm not real high on that idea.
Brett, contrary to whatever Kevin Durant may say or believe now, do you think the Thunder's culture could help with a guy like Rudy Gay in terms of fit here in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Rudy Gay. I don't know exactly what his personality is. I only know what you hear about teams that he's been around, and the idea, it does seem that whenever he's on a team, it seems to be a lot of teams looking to move Rudy Gay. That seems to be a thing that happens. You know, I'm a subscriber. I think it's Gary Parrish, who's covered college basketball for a long time. Gary Parrish's knucklehead rule. You can have one knucklehead. You can always have a knucklehead. If you've got a good culture, you can absorb a knucklehead, and the other guys teach him not to be a knucklehead. You get 2 or 3, now they start to influence your culture. So, yeah, I think absolutely they've got the kind of franchise, the kind of program they've built here, and the kind of leader and personality in Russell Westbrook who gets you over that hump when you bring a guy like that in. I think you absolutely can do it. Is Rudy Gay the guy? Is he the fit? You know, you look at his history and it indicates maybe no.
Roll call. Does the Thunder already have a knucklehead?
I don't think so.
Maybe not in a negative connotation. I mean, is knucklehead always have to be a negative connotation?
I would
Yeah,
generally
think for
I'll
this.
say this.
Yes.
I've never used it in a positive.
well, their quote-unquote knucklehead might be on the way out the door in a little bit.
Well,
so.
okay. We almost
point.
don't consider him. I mean, like, I didn't even think of McGarry. I'll be honest with you.
The Thunder has to pare down the roster, and that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
We all assume, and probably correctly, that Mitch McGarry is going to be that guy who's going to be the odd man out. The question is, how does the Thunder do it? Do they cut him? Do they trade him? What can you get for him? What do you guys see coming on the Mitch McGarry front?
Well, I mean, before this supposed serious talks broke down, I thought Mitch McGarry, when I read about it, I was like, Mitch McGarry probably would have been a guy who could have went to Sacramento. I mean, they've got a week.
I'm sorry. Every time I think about Sacramento, I'm just like, that is such the craziness of the Sacramento Kings. Throw Mitch McGarry into that mix. I just that made me laugh.
Mitch
He
McGarry
is tall.
Mitch
That's
McGarry
pretty much the one requirement from playing there.
Mitch McGarry and Boogie Cousins, just get them together and have them just talk. But I think between now and the beginning of the regular season next week on the 26th, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Thunder, whether they cut McGarry or whether they find a deal to get him out of here. But he's not going to be with the team. I mean, Billy Donovan talked about him today and his attitude and how he's been a good soldier for him this preseason, but he didn't play any games. He had a foot injury that he was dealing with, but he's not going to be on this roster, and the Thunder's got to find a way to offload him in some way and get back some return.
I've always wondered why they kept him on the roster this long. They're not playing him in preseason. They didn't play him at all in the preseason. And now we see this report that Rudy Gay trade, they were in serious discussions on a Rudy Gay trade. Maybe Mitch McGary was trade bait, not in the sense that he was the attractive piece, but just to help make the money work. Maybe he could have been a missing piece in a potential trade for Rudy Gay or someone like him. We'll never know perhaps now. But guys, final question. The contract extensions. What can we expect? Steven Adams is up, Victor Oladipo is up, Andre Robertson is up. These guys can all get contract extensions to their rookie scale deals before the 31st. That's the deadline. Do you think we'll see it? And if so, who among those three do you think we'll see contract extensions given to?
Well, you would think Steven Adams is your most likely candidate. I think the one thing that's really odd about the whole rookie scale, the rookie contract extension situation is that you got a new collective bargaining agreement coming, and you just don't know what's going to happen with that collective bargaining agreement. So you don't know what these contracts are going to look like in the context of a future CBA. That's really tricky for the Thunder. You've got to make decisions based on a deal you don't know, and this is a franchise that's had some rules change on them in the past, and so there are going to be some concerns about that. It's a tricky situation to deal with.
The CBA is the big thing, as Brett said, but other than that, the Thunder doesn't really have to do this right now. They haven't done it before with guys like Dion Waiters or Reggie Jackson. Those are guys that they ended up trading. But you'd imagine that they're not going to trade the Adams, Robertson, or Oladipo, and they can just wait until the offseason to re-sign these guys. Or if somebody throws an offer sheet at them, they can always match too, because they'll just be restricted free agents.
I wonder if they might not get as close to the deadline as they feel like they can still have some time to negotiate and just see where the CBA stands. I don't know how much handwriting on the wall there will be. Probably not enough for them to feel confident to make a deal. But you wonder if they wait to really start digging in. Do they then have to, prioritize? Does Adams become the guy that maybe he's priority one, and you start to try to do that deal if you're getting close and you feel like the CBA, you've got a handle on it? I don't know, but I don't really think that there's any rush to do it, especially with the CBA. If we knew what it was going to be, I think they would probably do everything they could to get those guys back on board.
And Steven Adams knows his money's coming whether it's now or later. So his people and himself, he said to himself, it's not a big deal. Like, I'm not worried about it. He knows that money's coming. So I don't think his side is going to be in a rush to get anything done.
Thanks, guys. And thank you, friends. That's all for Thunder Thursday. For the best Thunder coverage anywhere, stay right here at newsok.com and make sure to read us every day in the Oklahoman. We're going to go get some cupcakes, me and my work friends. Say it, Paige. Just say it. Say it, Paige. Say it.
Claire. Thanks, Darnell. Yes, you do. Yeah.
Kendrick, in bad times, tell us about how you need a job first, and then tell us everything you know.